It was a warm Friday evening, and the restaurant was bustling with activity. The soft clinking of cutlery mixed with quiet conversations, laughter, and the faint hum of jazz music playing in the background. The lights were dim but welcoming, casting a golden glow on the polished wooden tables and neatly arranged silverware. For the staff, Friday nights were always the busiest, and tonight was no exception. Among the waitstaff was a young woman, diligent and attentive, making sure each table received the attention it deserved. She had learned to balance speed with friendliness, understanding that a smile and a calm demeanor could turn even the most difficult guests into satisfied patrons. She was moving between tables with practiced ease, carrying trays filled with carefully plated dishes, refilling glasses, and checking on customers. Her hands were steady, but her mind was alert, scanning for any sign that someone needed help. She had encountered all types of people in her years at the restaurant, from polite regulars to demanding one-time visitors. Tonight, she noticed a group entering the restaurant that immediately drew attention. A man in a tailored suit led the way, followed closely by a woman whose presence seemed to fill the room. She walked with an air of confidence, but it was the kind of confidence that made people feel small rather than impressed. She had an expensive taste in her clothes, her jewelry sparkling under the restaurant lights, and a gaze that could unsettle anyone who met it. The young waitress took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay professional. She approached the table with a friendly smile, introducing herself and offering to take their orders. The man, clearly wealthy and used to luxury, nodded and said they would like a few recommendations from the chef. She carefully suggested a few dishes that were the most popular that evening, taking care to explain the ingredients and flavors without sounding rehearsed. The man listened attentively, but his companion seemed impatient and dismissive. As she moved on to take drink orders, she noticed the woman making small, cutting remarks to the other diners nearby. Her tone was sharp, almost mocking, and she seemed to enjoy drawing attention. The waitress felt a twinge of irritation, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago that reacting emotionally to difficult people rarely ended well. Instead, she focused on doing her job with precision, making sure that the drinks were served exactly as requested and that the table was attended to without delay. The girlfriend's behavior escalated as the evening went on. She criticized the menu choices, complained about the seating arrangement, and even questioned the waitress's recommendations with a tone that implied incompetence. "Are you sure you know what you're talking about?" she asked in a voice that carried across the table, drawing the attention of nearby guests. The waitress smiled politely and reassured her that the dishes she suggested were indeed favorites among many patrons and highly recommended by the chef. Despite the tension, the young waitress remained composed. She had faced rude and entitled people before, but something about this woman was different. There was a sense of superiority in every word she spoke, a belief that she could make others feel small to elevate herself. Yet, the waitress refused to let it affect her work. She moved around the table efficiently, taking orders, refilling glasses, and checking if the guests needed anything else, all while maintaining a calm and professional demeanor that nearby diners began to notice the exchange. Some exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the disrespect, while others tried to ignore it and focus on their meals. The restaurant manager, watching from a distance, noticed the situation but trusted his staff to handle it. The young waitress's ability to stay calm and collected under pressure was something he had admired from the start, and he knew she would handle this challenge just as she had handled many before. The couple continued to test her patience. The woman made remarks about the speed of service, questioning why the dishes weren't arriving faster. She made snide comments about the presentation of the food, comparing it unfavorably to other restaurants she had visited. Every insult was delivered with a smile that barely hid her contempt. The waitress responded with polite explanations, emphasizing the care that went into preparing each dish and the quality of the ingredients. She spoke with confidence, never raising her voice, never letting the woman's words pierce her professionalism. As the night progressed, the young waitress noticed something about the man accompanying the woman. While he was clearly wealthy and accustomed to a certain lifestyle, there was a subtle unease in his demeanor. He did not join in the mocking or the belittling. Instead, he seemed preoccupied, occasionally glancing at the waitress with a quiet appreciation for her composure. It was as if he recognized her professionalism and contrasted it silently with the arrogance of his companion. At one point, the woman demanded a change in their order, insisting that the chef prepare something off the menu. The young waitress calmly explained the limitations, suggesting alternatives that would satisfy the request without compromising the kitchen's workflow. The woman huffed in frustration, but reluctantly agreed. The waitress then made a quick note to the kitchen, ensuring that the special order would be prepared with precision. She moved efficiently, balancing the needs of this difficult table with the rest of the restaurant, never letting the chaos affect her performance. The rest of the guests watched with varying degrees of curiosity and sympathy. Some admired the waitress for handling the situation with grace, while others were quietly annoyed by the girlfriend's behavior. The atmosphere was tense, but the waitress's calm presence served as a stabilizing force. She continued to circulate among the tables, checking in with everyone, making sure drinks were refilled, and observing the overall mood of the restaurant. As the evening neared its end, the couple prepared to leave. The woman left a small, almost imperceptible tip and offered a final, condescending remark as they stood to leave. The waitress smiled politely, thanked them for visiting, and wished them a good night, concealing the relief she felt as they walked out the door. Once they were gone, she allowed herself a brief moment to exhale, feeling the weight of the encounter lift slightly from her shoulders. After the couple left, she shared the experience with a few of her colleagues. They listened with a mixture of admiration and disbelief, praising her ability to remain composed in the face of such rudeness. It was a story that would be retold among the staff for days, a reminder of how professionalism and poise could turn even a difficult situation into a display of strength and character. Later that night, as she cleaned up her station and prepared to leave, she reflected on the events. Despite the woman's harsh words and belittling behavior, the waitress felt a sense of quiet pride. She had handled herself with dignity, maintained her professionalism, and proven that character mattered more than wealth or status. It was a lesson she had learned early in her career, but experiences like this reaffirmed its importance. The millionaire, meanwhile, left the restaurant with his companion, thinking about the evening in a different light. He couldn't help but notice the contrast between the woman's arrogance and the waitress's composure. It was a subtle observation, but one that planted a seed of reflection. Perhaps there was more to respect than wealth or social standing. Perhaps genuine kindness, professionalism, and grace under pressure were qualities that truly mattered. That night, the young waitress returned home tired but satisfied. She had done her job well, faced a challenge with strength, and maintained her dignity. Little did she know, the events of this evening would be remembered by the people who witnessed them, and would soon play a part in a story that neither she nor the couple could have predicted. It was a reminder that every encounter, no matter how small, could leave a lasting impression, shaping perceptions and revealing truths about character and integrity. The next morning started quietly for the young waitress. The streets were still damp from the early morning dew, and the soft light of dawn spilled across the sidewalks. She walked to the small cafe nearby, her usual routine after a long shift. The events from the night before replayed in her mind, not with anger, but as a story that carried lessons in patience and composure. She thought about how she had handled the difficult guests, especially the woman whose arrogance seemed to fill every corner of the room. She felt proud, but also reflective. Every job, every interaction, she realized, carried a chance to show who she was. Even if no one noticed in the moment. Her coworkers greeted her with friendly smiles. They had already heard bits of the story from the night before, as staff who finished earlier often shared tales of memorable encounters. Their admiration was genuine, and it lifted her spirits. She laughed with them, recounted small details, and shared how she kept her calm. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, savoring the small sense of victory that came from knowing she had done the right thing. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the millionaire was reflecting on the evening in a much different way. He sat in his office, a large space filled with expensive furniture and modern art. The office was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic outside. He replayed the dinner in his mind, focusing not on the woman's complaints, but on the young waitress. She had been composed, professional, and respectful, despite being treated poorly. There was a certain dignity in her actions that contrasted sharply with the behavior of his companion. He found himself thinking about the kind of person she was, someone who managed to hold her own without needing wealth or influence. The contrast weighed heavily on him. He had been in countless social and business situations where people tried to assert power through status, and it rarely impressed him. But this waitress had managed to leave a lasting impression without any such tools. He realized that her calm, professional demeanor said more about her character than anything money could buy. He started to see his companion in a new light as well, noticing that her behavior was not only disrespectful, but also revealed insecurity masked by arrogance. He could no longer ignore that her charm and confidence were only surface deep. Back at the restaurant, the young waitress continued with her daily routine. The restaurant was quieter during the day, giving her time to catch up on smaller tasks, organize orders, and prepare for the evening crowd. Yet even in these mundane moments, the memory of the previous night lingered. She wondered about the couple, about the life they led, and whether the man had taken any notice of her performance beyond what was visible. She could not know that her professionalism had already sparked curiosity, quietly reshaping opinions of those around her. As the morning went on, she found herself reflecting on the differences between people. Some believed that wealth and influence automatically commanded respect. Others, like herself, understood that respect was earned through actions and character. She thought about the small ways people tested her patience: rude comments, unfair criticism, and dismissive behavior. She had learned to handle them not with anger, but with steadiness. Each encounter had become a quiet lesson in self-control and grace, reinforcing values she held dear. During her break, she sat near a window, sipping a cup of tea and watching passers-by. There was a sense of normalcy that felt grounding, a reminder that life moved forward regardless of one person's arrogance or wealth. She thought about her family and friends, those who had always supported her, and reminded her of the importance of humility and kindness. Their encouragement had helped her maintain her poise, even in situations where she was tested unfairly. Meanwhile, the millionaire arranged a meeting with his closest business advisors. Though his mind was only partially on the usual matters of profit, investment, and growth, the events of the previous night lingered like a subtle weight. He discussed potential business partnerships and investments, but his thoughts kept returning to the waitress. There was something genuine in her manner that he found increasingly rare in the circles he frequented. He started questioning not just his personal life, but also the kinds of relationships he nurtured in business. Were they built on skill and honesty, or on superficial charm and appearances? Hours passed, and the young waitress returned to work for the evening shift. The restaurant once again filled with chatter, clinking cutlery, and the smell of freshly cooked meals. She moved through the space with efficiency, balancing multiple tables, ensuring that every guest was attended to with care. Her mind, however, occasionally drifted to thoughts of the previous evening. She recalled the subtle glances from the man, noticing how different he had seemed from his companion. It was not admiration in a superficial sense, but something quieter, something that hinted at recognition of her effort and dignity. Her colleagues noticed her mood as well. They sensed a mixture of pride and curiosity, as though she herself was starting to wonder what kind of impact she had on people without realizing it. The young waitress continued to serve each table with a warm smile, careful attention, and a quiet grace. Even when difficult guests appeared, she maintained the balance of professionalism and patience, her actions becoming an unspoken example to everyone around her. Later in the evening, the restaurant manager stopped by to check in. He asked casually how the morning had gone, knowing that the waitress had handled the previous night admirably. She shared a few details, laughing at the small absurdities and recounting how she stayed calm despite the challenges. The manager nodded, appreciating not only her ability to manage the situation, but also her attitude. In his eyes, she was an invaluable member of the team, a person whose character could influence the entire atmosphere of the restaurant. As the night went on, a few familiar faces returned. The atmosphere was more relaxed, though the memory of the previous night's tension lingered for some. The waitress moved from table to table with the same steady rhythm, her attention to detail evident in every interaction. Drinks were refilled promptly, dishes served with care, and every guest left feeling heard and respected. The small victories of each successful table reminded her that her work mattered, even if it was not always noticed by everyone. Back in his office, the millionaire considered a change in perspective. He realized that the way people treated others, especially those in positions considered lesser in social hierarchy, spoke volumes about their true character. The waitress had demonstrated qualities that no amount of money could purchase: patience, humility, grace, and strength. Her example highlighted what he had long overlooked in his personal and professional life, a truth that quietly reshaped his thinking. The night ended quietly, with the young waitress leaving the restaurant feeling a mix of fatigue and satisfaction. She had faced challenges, maintained her composure, and continued to uphold her values. Walking home, she thought about the unpredictable nature of life and the ways in which small encounters could leave lasting impressions. She could not have known that the events of that night would soon take an unexpected turn, leading to situations that would test people's character, reveal hidden strengths, and create opportunities for growth. That evening, both the young waitress and the millionaire reflected on the same encounter, but from entirely different perspectives. One found quiet pride in the knowledge that she had handled herself with dignity, while the other began to reevaluate his understanding of respect, influence, and the value of true character. Life had a way of teaching lessons subtly, and both were learning, each in their own way, that the measure of a person was often far removed from wealth, appearance, or social status. The seeds of change had been planted quietly, and soon the story would continue in ways that neither of them could have predicted. The following morning started quietly, with sunlight spilling across the city streets, reflecting off the windows of tall office buildings. The young waitress, unaware of the changes about to unfold, went about her usual routine. Her day began with a simple breakfast and a moment of reflection. She thought about her work, her family, and the little victories that made her life feel meaningful. She did not know that outside the restaurant, the world she knew was about to intersect with a life very different from her own. Far across the city, the millionaire and his girlfriend were in a private meeting with a group of lawyers and financial advisors. The conversation was serious, hushed, and full of technical terms. The young waitress could not have imagined the sudden shift in the woman's circumstances. A legal settlement related to family inheritance had granted her a significant number of shares in a major company, immediately giving her a powerful position. Overnight, the girlfriend moved from being an outsider in the business world to a key shareholder. with influence over decisions in the boardroom. The change was dramatic, sudden, and entirely unexpected. The girlfriend, who had always relied on charm and appearances, found herself in a situation where wealth alone would not be enough. She was now responsible for understanding business strategies, attending meetings, and making decisions that affected employees, stakeholders, and the future of the company. At first, she felt a thrill, a rush of power she had never experienced before. But soon, reality began to settle in. The knowledge required, the complexity of the issues, and the responsibility weighed heavily on her. She realized that being wealthy and influential in a personal sense was very different from being truly respected and effective in a professional arena. Meanwhile, the millionaire observed these developments quietly. He noticed how the woman reacted to the sudden responsibility, how quickly her initial confidence began to crack under pressure. For him, it was an interesting contrast to the young waitress, who had demonstrated true composure and professionalism in a much smaller, more personal setting. The millionaire began to appreciate the difference between inherited or sudden power and earned respect. He considered how qualities like patience, humility, and grace under pressure could make someone truly influential, far beyond titles or money. Back at the restaurant, the young waitress continued her work, unaware of the changes affecting the lives of the couple from the previous night. The day was filled with the usual rhythm of serving guests, taking orders, and making sure each table felt attended to and valued. She moved gracefully between tables, balancing multiple tasks with ease, her calm demeanor a quiet anchor for the bustling environment around her. Her colleagues admired her focus and patience, often learning from her example without even realizing it. As the day progressed, the story of her encounter with the couple began to circulate quietly among those who had witnessed it. Some diners had mentioned it to friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. The story highlighted the stark contrast between the woman's arrogance and the waitress's professionalism. The narrative, while small in scale, started to gain subtle attention. People were fascinated by the idea that someone could maintain dignity and grace under such pressure. And the young waitress became a symbol of quiet strength and composure. By mid-afternoon, the girlfriend received a briefing from the company's executive team. She was now expected to attend meetings, review reports, and participate in strategic decisions. The reality of her new role began to sink in. She quickly realized that charm, attitude, and wealth could not replace knowledge, preparation, and experience. Her initial confidence faltered as she faced questions she could not answer and discussions she struggled to follow. The boardroom, which had once seemed an abstract concept, now felt overwhelming. The millionaire watched closely. He noticed how quickly the woman's demeanor shifted under pressure. The arrogance and dismissiveness she had displayed in the restaurant were replaced by uncertainty and hesitation. He considered the young waitress again, remembering how she had handled the previous night with composure and grace. It became clear to him that true capability and respect were earned through action and integrity, not simply inherited or purchased through money. The contrast was striking and provided a powerful lesson in judgment and character. Back at the restaurant, the young waitress handled an unexpected rush of customers during the evening service. The restaurant was full, the air buzzing with conversation, clinking plates, and the occasional burst of laughter. She moved from table to table, serving meals, refilling drinks, and checking in on each guest. Despite the intensity, she remained calm and efficient, her professionalism never faltering. Each small victory, a satisfied customer, a smooth service, a genuine smile, reinforced her sense of pride in her work and her ability to handle challenges. As the night continued, a few regular customers noticed her focused energy and patience. They commented on how smoothly everything was running, how attentive she was, and how much they appreciated her care. The young waitress, while polite and modest, felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. It was not fame or recognition she sought, but the knowledge that she had done her job well, that she had treated people with respect and professionalism, even when tested. The validation from regular patrons was a small but meaningful reward for her dedication. Meanwhile, the girlfriend struggled to adapt to her new role. She attended meetings, attempted to understand complex financial reports, and tried to make decisions that carried real consequences. Her initial excitement faded into frustration and doubt. She realized that the position she had acquired overnight required skill, patience, and a deep understanding of business, qualities she had not developed. For the first time, she faced situations where money alone could not solve problems, where charm and attitude could not substitute for knowledge and preparation. The millionaire observed all of this with a growing sense of clarity. He reflected on the lessons from the restaurant encounter. He understood that character, patience, and integrity were far more valuable than wealth and status. The young waitress had demonstrated these qualities effortlessly, while the woman who had belittled her struggled to find her footing in a new, challenging environment. It was a moment of realization for him, a quiet but profound understanding of what truly mattered in people and relationships. At the end of the evening, the young waitress returned home, tired but satisfied. She reflected on the day, thinking about the interactions with customers, the small victories, and the lessons learned from experience. She could not have known that the events of the previous night, combined with the sudden changes in the lives of those guests, would soon lead to a series of developments that would intertwine their lives in unexpected ways. The seeds of change had been planted quietly, waiting for circumstances to reveal the true measure of character and integrity. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about the unpredictability of life, the lessons in every encounter, and the importance of staying true to oneself. She had faced challenges before, and she would face more in the future. But she knew, deep down, that professionalism, patience, and grace were qualities that would serve her well in every situation. Unbeknownst to her, the world outside the restaurant was changing rapidly, and the consequences of last night's encounter would soon manifest in ways she could never have imagined. The morning after the girlfriend received her shares, the boardroom felt tense. The room was filled with executives, lawyers, and advisors, all waiting for her input. The young woman who had once belittled a waitress now had a position that demanded seriousness, preparation, and insight. At first, she tried to assert herself with the same confidence and sharp tone she had always relied on. However, she quickly realized that this approach, which worked in social settings, was ineffective in the corporate world. Her words, once cutting and commanding in a casual environment, seemed small and insufficient among seasoned professionals who expected thoughtful contributions. The millionaire was present in the room, observing silently. He noticed every detail, the hesitation before she spoke, the way she struggled to answer questions, the frustration that crept into her expressions. In contrast, he remembered the calm, composed woman at the restaurant, the waitress, who had managed a far more difficult situation with ease and grace. It became clearer to him how important qualities like patience, humility, and respect truly were. The boardroom, he realized, was not unlike the restaurant. Both were arenas where character and composure mattered, more than appearances and bravado. The executives addressed the new shareholder respectfully but firmly. They outlined the responsibilities of her position, the expectations of her involvement, and the consequences of decisions made in haste. The woman found herself nodding, trying to absorb the flood of information. She had never faced such immediate pressure, and her confidence began to waver. It was not just a matter of status or influence. She now had to make decisions that affected real people, the livelihood of employees, and the success of the company. While the meeting progressed, the millionaire reflected on the subtle irony of the situation. A person who had once wielded power through arrogance was now learning the limits of inherited authority. Meanwhile, the young waitress had already shown, in a far smaller context, the qualities that made someone truly respected. It was a quiet, almost poetic contrast, highlighting the difference between temporary influence and earned esteem. Back at the restaurant, the young waitress was finishing her morning shift. She had no idea how drastically the lives of the people she had served were changing. Her world was small, contained, and familiar, yet in some ways more significant than she realized. She interacted with regular customers, offered genuine advice about dishes, and responded patiently to difficult requests. Each action reflected her values, her calm strength, and her ability to remain grounded under pressure. The contrast between the two women could not have been more pronounced. The girlfriend, now in a boardroom filled with strangers, was learning the hard way that entitlement alone could not carry her. The young waitress, by contrast, displayed competence and composure naturally, earning respect without trying. Her actions were a subtle reminder that true influence stemmed from character, not status. As the boardroom meeting continued, the new shareholder made several missteps. She interrupted discussions with ill-informed opinions, attempted to assert authority without understanding context, and struggled to interpret the complex financial data before her. The executives maintained professionalism, correcting gently but firmly, emphasizing the importance of preparation, thoughtfulness, and listening. Each correction was a lesson in humility, an opportunity for growth, and a reminder that respect was built on substance rather than bravado. The millionaire observed quietly. He had seen arrogance before, but this was different. The girlfriend had never faced a situation where superficial confidence alone could not carry her. For him, it was a moment of realization. Wealth and influence could place someone in a position of power, but true leadership required more: patience, intelligence, humility, and the ability to understand and connect with people. In this, the waitress had already demonstrated what the girlfriend now struggled to achieve. Meanwhile, in her own world, the young waitress faced the evening crowd with ease. Customers arrived, some familiar, some new, each with their own requests and quirks. She handled them all with the same calm efficiency, never letting frustration creep into her tone or demeanor. Her professionalism shone, a quiet strength that affected everyone around her. The manager noticed her composure, the smooth rhythm with which she managed tasks, and the respect she elicited from patrons. For those who witnessed it, she became an example of what dignity and patience truly meant. During the night, the boardroom meeting came to a close. The girl free, and left feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and frustrated. Her initial thrill of power had faded, replaced by the weight of responsibility and the awareness of her own limitations. She had realized, perhaps for the first time, that influence and respect were not granted automatically. They had to be earned through competence, patience, and consistent effort. Her arrogance, once her shield, now seemed inadequate in the face of real expectations. The millionaire, observing the outcome, felt a mixture of relief and clarity. He had witnessed a real lesson in character unfold before him. The young waitress's quiet strength, her ability to handle pressure with grace, and her professional demeanor were now contrasted with the struggles of someone who had relied solely on superficial charm and wealth. It became clear to him that these qualities, often overlooked, were what truly defined a person's value and influence. At the restaurant, the young waitress concluded her shift and prepared to go home. She reflected on the day, her interactions with customers, and the satisfaction of completing her work with care and precision. She felt a sense of fulfillment, not from recognition or status, but from knowing that she had acted with integrity. Her day-to-day life was grounded in reality, in tangible actions and meaningful interactions. It was this foundation, quiet and unassuming, that provided her strength and dignity. The evening had reinforced a lesson she already Understood, character mattered more than appearances, patience more than arrogance, and respect more than entitlement. The events of the previous nights, combined with the sudden elevation of the girlfriend, had created a scenario that highlighted these truths in a dramatic and unforeseen way. Life, she understood intuitively, often provided lessons through circumstances rather than instructions, showing people the consequences of their actions and choices. As she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, the city buzzing quietly around her, she thought about the unpredictability of life. Small encounters could have significant consequences. How one treated others could leave lasting impressions, shaping perceptions and sometimes even altering the course of events. She had learned, through simple acts of professionalism and dignity, that strength was often quiet and understated, yet profoundly impactful. That night, the millionaire and the young waitress existed in parallel worlds, each influenced in subtle ways by the events that had occurred. One was learning lessons in humility and the limits of inherited power. The other continued to demonstrate the quiet resilience and grace that made her respected and valued. The stage was set for the next chapter, where these parallel paths would converge, bringing with them the opportunities and challenges that life reserved for those who navigated it with integrity and poise. The morning after another challenging boardroom session, the girlfriend woke with a heavy sense of responsibility. The excitement she had felt when she received her shares had long faded, replaced by the weight of reality. She had spent the night going over notes, trying to understand reports, and preparing for the next set of meetings. Every decision now carried potential consequences, and the confidence she had once wielded so easily felt like a fragile illusion. She realized that her previous life of entitlement had given her no preparation for these moments, and that skill, patience, and knowledge were far more important than charm or wealth. The millionaire watched closely, noting how the woman's initial arrogance had been replaced with self-doubt. He reflected again on the young waitress, whose quiet composure in the restaurant had left a lasting impression. It became clear to him that genuine respect and admiration came from consistent behavior, character, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. The girlfriend's struggles in the boardroom provided a stark contrast, emphasizing the difference between superficial influence and real capability. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the young waitress prepared for her evening shift. She moved efficiently, arranging tables, checking reservations, and ensuring everything was ready for the influx of customers. Despite the regular busyness of her environment, she felt calm, focused, and in control. Her interactions with customers were smooth and attentive, demonstrating not only her professionalism, but also her ability to connect with people on a human level. Each smile, each polite word, each careful action reinforced her quiet dignity and competence. That evening, a new group of diners arrived, including a few who had witnessed the events of the previous week. They watched the young waitress work, commenting quietly on her grace under pressure. Her reputation, though subtle, was beginning to spread. People admired her for qualities that were not flashy or showy, but deeply meaningful: patience, empathy, attention to detail, and unwavering professionalism. In a world where status and wealth often drew attention, it was these small yet powerful traits that left a lasting impression. Back in the corporate world, the girlfriend faced another round of meetings. She tried to assert herself, but quickly realized that understanding the nuances of business strategy, reading reports accurately, and making informed decisions were far more important than projecting confidence. Her advisors patiently guided her, correcting errors and explaining the reasoning behind each recommendation. The experience was humbling, forcing her to confront the limits of her previous approach to life, where superficial charm had sufficed. It was a difficult lesson, but one she could not ignore. That the millionaire reflected on the lessons being demonstrated in both arenas. He thought about how easily one could be mistaken in judging someone's worth based on appearances, wealth, or social position. The young waitress had shown him that character, patience, and integrity mattered far more than status. Her actions, though simple, carried weight, teaching lessons about respect, dignity, and human connection. The girlfriend's struggle, on the other hand, highlighted the limitations of arrogance and entitlement, showing how quickly superficial confidence could falter when real responsibility arrived. Back at the restaurant, the young waitress continued to excel. She navigated difficult customers with tact, managed multiple tables seamlessly, and maintained a warm, professional demeanor throughout the evening. Her colleagues noticed her efficiency and calm presence, often turning to her for guidance when situations became stressful. Her example inspired those around her, showing that leadership and influence could be demonstrated quietly, through actions rather than loud assertions of power. As the night wore on, the boardroom meeting ended with a mixture of relief and reflection for the girlfriend. She had learned important lessons, yet the weight of her new role still pressed heavily on her. It became clear that her position required more than inheritance or status. It demanded learning, patience, and consistent effort. She had begun to understand, in a deeper way, that respect and authority were earned through actions, not assumed through wealth or appearance. The millionaire, observing the developments, felt a sense of clarity about what he valued in people. He realized that the waitress, who had faced challenges without any tools of power except patience and professionalism, embodied qualities he respected deeply. Her example reminded him that true influence was earned through character, consistency, and the way one treated others, rather than through money or superficial status. Meanwhile, the young waitress finished her shift and prepared to head home. She reflected on the day, satisfied with her work and interactions. She felt a sense of quiet pride, knowing that she had conducted herself with dignity and care. Her life, though simple in comparison to the complex world of wealth and corporate influence, was rich with meaning through her actions, integrity, and the respect she earned from those around her. The following morning, the boardroom reconvened, and the girlfriend approached the day with slightly more humility. The lessons of the previous sessions lingered, reminding her that true effectiveness came from preparation, listening, and learning. Her approach began to shift, though slowly, toward understanding that respect was built on competence and character rather than appearance or entitlement. The millionaire observed, appreciating the subtle changes, but still reflecting on the contrast between her struggles and the natural poise of the young waitress. The young waitress, in her own world, continued to face the challenges of her job with grace. Each interaction, each service, each small success reinforced her confidence in her abilities and in the values she held. She remained unaware of how her actions had created impressions far beyond the restaurant, subtly influencing those who had observed her, including the millionaire. By the end of the week, it was clear that lessons had been learned on multiple levels. The girlfriend, though still navigating her new responsibilities, had begun to grasp the importance of preparation, humility, and patience. The millionaire reflected on the importance of character and respect over wealth and status, and the young waitress continued to embody the quiet strength that had impressed all who encountered her. A reminder that true dignity and influence were measured not by position or inheritance, but by consistent, thoughtful action and the way one treated others. The story closed on a note of reflection and subtle transformation. Each person had faced challenges that revealed essential truths about character, influence, and respect. The young waitress remained the quiet anchor of integrity and professionalism. The millionaire gained insight into what truly mattered in people and relationships. The girlfriend, through her struggles, began to understand that wealth and appearance alone could not substitute for skill, patience, or humility. Life had provided each of them with lessons in unexpected ways. proving that respect and influence are earned, and that dignity and character ultimately shape how we are remembered and valued by others. As the young waitress walked home that night, the city quieting around her, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The lessons she had unknowingly imparted through her calm, patient actions would ripple far beyond her immediate environment. The events of the week had created a quiet ripple effect, influencing people in ways she might never fully know. And through it all, she remained herself, diligent, kind, patient, and strong, a testament to the power of character over circumstance, and a reminder that respect is always earned, never given.